I punished my daughter for still mourning her mother by sending her away to boarding school so my stepson could have peace. Now she refuses to visit me, even on Christmas, and says I'm dead to her too. The rejection letter came back marked returned to sender in Emma's careful handwriting. Third Christmas card I've sent that she's refused to accept. I'm staring at the envelope now, my fingers tracing her deliberate script, and I can't stop the memories from flooding back to that terrible night 3 years ago when I made the worst decision of my life. I never meant for it to go this far. When I married David 18 months after Sarah's funeral, I thought I was giving Emma a father figure. A stable home. A chance at happiness again. What I didn't expect was how Tyler, David's 16-year-old son, would react to sharing space with a girl who couldn't stop crying for her dead mother. "She's doing it again," Tyler would whisper to his father during dinner, nodding toward Emma's empty chair. She'd taken to eating in her room, claiming she wasn't hungry, but I knew she was upstairs playing that recording of Sarah singing her lullabies. The same one she'd been playing every night for 2 years straight. David would squeeze my hand under the table, his wedding ring still feeling foreign against my palm. "Give it time, Rebecca. She'll adjust." But Tyler was getting thinner by the week. Dark circles shadowed his eyes like bruises, and his grades were slipping from A's to C's. The guidance counselor called twice about his concerning behavior changes and suggested we consider therapy. Meanwhile, Emma continued her nightly ritual of grief that seemed to permeate every corner of our house like smoke that wouldn't clear. I found the first note Tyler left on my nightstand on a Tuesday morning in September. His handwriting was shaky, like he'd written it in the dark. "Mom, Rebecca, I can't sleep again." She was crying until 3 a.m. and playing that song over and over. "I have a chemistry test today and I studied for hours but I can't remember anything. My head feels fuzzy all the time now. Please make it stop." My heart broke reading those words. Tyler had been such a bright, energetic kid when I first met him 2 years earlier. Quick to laugh, always helping his father with weekend projects, eager to show me his baseball card collection. Now he looked like a ghost wandering through his own home, jumping at sudden noises and forgetting to eat lunch. That evening, I knocked on Emma's door with what I thought was maternal gentleness. She was 12 then, all sharp elbows and defiant eyes, clutching her mother's old cashmere sweater like a security blanket. The room still smelled like Sarah's lavender perfume from the clothes Emma refused to let me wash. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about the music," I said, perching on the edge of her bed carefully. Her mattress was surrounded by Sarah's belongings like a fortress: photo albums, jewelry boxes, half-finished crossword puzzles, even Sarah's reading glasses folded neatly on the nightstand. "It helps me remember her voice," Emma whispered, not meeting my eyes. Her fingers worked over the sweater's fabric like prayer beads. "Sometimes I dream I can't remember what she sounded like anymore." "I know, baby. But Tyler's struggling with his sleep, and his grades are. Tyler's not my brother." The words came out sharp enough to cut. This isn't his house. This was Mommy's house first, and she bought it for us, not them. She wasn't wrong. David and I had decided to live in the home Sarah and I had shared, thinking familiar surroundings would comfort Emma. But instead, it became a shrine where my daughter performed her grief like a sacred ritual while my new family withered around her like flowers in toxic soil. I tried everything I could think of first. Family therapy sessions where Emma sat in stony silence while Tyler fidgeted anxiously in his chair. Compromise schedules where she could play the recording for 1 hour each evening. Noise-canceling headphones for Tyler that he said made him feel trapped inside his own head. Sleep medication for him that left him groggy and disoriented at school. Nothing worked. If anything, Emma seemed to sense Tyler's desperation and lean into her grief harder, playing the recording louder, crying more dramatically, leaving Sarah's photos in places where Tyler would accidentally see them and flinch. The breaking point came on a Thursday night in October. I woke up to find Tyler sitting on the kitchen floor in his Spider-Man pajamas, shaking so hard his teeth were chattering. It was 2:30 in the morning, and Emma's lullaby was echoing down the hallway on repeat, the same melancholy melody that had haunted our house for months. "I threw up during the SAT practice test," he whispered when he saw me. Right there in front of everyone. I couldn't concentrate. The numbers kept swimming around on the page and all I could hear was that song playing in my head. I pulled him into my arms, feeling how frail he'd become. His shoulder blades were sharp against my palms, and I could count his ribs through his thin pajama shirt. This wasn't just sleep deprivation anymore. My stepson was having a breakdown, and Emma's grief was the trigger everyone was too afraid to name. "Mrs. Peterson thinks I might have anxiety disorder now," Tyler continued, his voice barely audible. "She wants Dad to take me to a doctor. But I'm not sick, Mom, Rebecca. I'm just so tired. I can't remember the last time I slept through the night." My throat closed up. Tyler had started calling me Mom Rebecca 6 months after the wedding, a compromise between the formal Rebecca David had suggested and the mom his heart wanted to try. Now, holding his trembling body against mine, I felt the full weight of that title and everything it demanded. David found us there 20 minutes later, both of us crying quietly on the kitchen tiles. He took one look at Tyler's condition and something shifted in his face. Without saying a word, he marched straight to Emma's room. I heard raised voices, then Emma's door slamming so hard the family photos rattled on the hallway wall. "This can't continue," David said when he returned to the kitchen. Tyler had fallen asleep against my shoulder, his breathing finally steady. "She needs professional help, Rebecca. Real help. And Tyler needs peace in his own home. She's processing trauma, David. The grief counselor said it could take years. It's been 2 years." His voice was tired, defeated. "How much more time does she need? How much damage are we going to let her do to Tyler while we wait for her to process?" I wanted to defend Emma. To explain that 12-year-old girls don't just bounce back from losing their mothers to cancer. To remind him that she'd watched Sarah waste away for 6 months, had been the one to find her unconscious in the bathroom that final morning. But looking down at Tyler's exhausted face, I felt something fundamental shift inside me. This boy needed protection too. He'd lost his mother to divorce when he was 10, then watched his father struggle to rebuild their life from scratch. Now he was losing himself to anxiety and insomnia because I couldn't figure out how to help Emma heal without destroying everyone else in the process. The Riverside Academy brochure arrived in our mailbox the next day like a sign. David swore he hadn't requested it, but the timing felt too convenient to be coincidence. "It's a therapeutic boarding school," I read aloud from the glossy pages that night after Tyler had gone to bed. "Specialized programs for adolescents dealing with grief and trauma. Small class sizes. 24-hour counseling support. Beautiful campus in Vermont with equine therapy and art programs." "Vermont's pretty far," David said carefully, not quite meeting my eyes. "That's the point." The words came out before I could stop them, harsh and final. "She needs intensive support we can't provide here. Space to heal without constantly triggering Tyler's anxiety. And he needs space to recover without feeling guilty about Emma's pain." We told ourselves it was temporary. Just for the remainder of 7th grade. Give Emma intensive therapy and Tyler time to stabilize, then bring her home for 8th grade with better coping skills and a fresh start for everyone. But Emma knew. Children always know when they're being sent away. I made the mistake of showing her the brochure first, thinking she might be excited about the horses and art studios. Instead, she went very still, studying the photos of smiling teenagers in cozy common rooms and scenic hiking trails. "You're choosing him over me," she said finally. She was standing in her doorway, small and fierce, holding her mother's sweater against her chest like armor. "Mommy would never have sent me away. This isn't punishment, Em. It's treatment. You'll make friends, learn new coping strategies, have counselors who specialize in grief. You want me gone?" Her voice was eerily calm, more terrifying than if she'd screamed. "You want Tyler to have Mommy's house without me in it crying about her. You want to pretend she never existed so you can play happy family with your new son." The accusation hit me like a physical blow. "That's not true. I loved your mother, Emma. I would never want to erase her memory. But you'll erase me." She tilted her head, studying my face with an expression too old for her 12 years. "Because I'm the part of her that's inconvenient. The part that won't be quiet and grateful and easy." I should have knelt down then. Should have pulled her close and promised to find another solution. Should have chosen my daughter over everyone else's comfort, the way Sarah would have done without hesitation. Instead, I said the words that haunt me every night: "Sometimes we have to make sacrifices for the good of the whole family." Emma's face went completely blank. She looked at me like I was a stranger who just slapped her across the face, like she was seeing me clearly for the first time and didn't recognize what she found. "I'm not your family," she whispered. "Tyler is your family. David is your family. I'm just the leftover piece from your first life that you can't figure out what to do with." The drive to Riverside Academy 3 weeks later was the longest 4 hours of my life. Emma sat in the back seat, staring out the window at the changing autumn landscape, occasionally wiping tears she didn't want me to see. I kept stealing glances at her in the rearview mirror, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the way her hair fell across her shoulders in waves so much like Sarah's it made my chest ache. Already missing her before she was even gone. She'd barely spoken since the night I'd told her about the school. No tantrums, no pleading, no desperate promises to be better. Just a terrible, adult acceptance that made me want to turn the car around and drive straight home. At check-in, she hugged me stiffly when I tried to say goodbye, her body rigid and unforgiving in my arms. "I love you, Emma," I whispered into her hair, breathing in her familiar scent of strawberry shampoo and childhood. She pulled back and looked me in the eyes, her gaze steady and devastating. "I love Mommy. And she's dead too now." That was 3 years ago, and I can still feel the weight of those words like stones in my chest. Tyler graduated high school with honors 6 months later. Got a full scholarship to college. His anxiety improved within weeks of Emma leaving, and he blossomed back into the confident, funny kid I'd fallen in love with when I fell in love with his father. The house became peaceful again, quiet dinners where we actually talked, Normal bedtimes, no more tears seeping through the walls at night like water damage. But Emma never came home. At first, she called dutifully every Sunday at exactly 2 o'clock, our conversations lasting precisely 15 minutes like she'd set a timer. She told me about her classes, her roommate who was from California and collected vintage postcards, the horses they had for riding therapy that she'd named after characters from books. Never asked about home. Never asked about Tyler. Never asked about the room we'd kept exactly as she'd left it, like a museum exhibit of interrupted childhood. How's the counseling going? I'd ask, desperate to fill the spaces between her polite updates. Fine, she'd reply in a voice that sounded like she was reading from a script. Dr. Martinez says I'm making good progress. I should go now. Study group starts in 5 minutes. The calls got shorter. Then less frequent. By 9th grade, I was the one calling her, leaving voicemails that went unreturned for days. Emma, it's Mom. Just checking in. Tyler made the honor roll again. He asks about you all the time. Call me back when you get a chance. Emma, it's Mom again. I know you're busy with midterms, but I'd love to hear your voice. Maybe we could plan a visit for spring break? Emma, please call me back. It's been 2 weeks. I'm starting to worry something's wrong. When she finally called back after 2.5 weeks of silence, her voice sounded different. Older. More distant. Like she was speaking to me from another planet. Sorry, Rebecca. I've been busy with school stuff and a big project for AP History. Rebecca. Not Mom. Not even Mother. Just my name, spoken like I was a family acquaintance she was obligated to update occasionally. Emma, I'm still your mother. You can call me Mom. A pause that stretched so long I wondered if the line had gone dead. Then, can I? Because mothers don't usually send their daughters away when they become inconvenient. The accusation hit like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting it for months. That's not what happened, Em. You needed help we couldn't provide at home. Tyler needed help I was preventing at home, she corrected, and I could hear the therapist's language in her words, the careful way she'd learned to articulate her abandonment. There's a difference. By sophomore year, the phone calls stopped entirely. I had to contact her through the school's family coordinator, a cheerful woman named Mrs. Chen who would pass along messages and report back that Emma was doing exceptionally well academically and socially but wasn't ready for direct family contact at this time. I sent letters instead. Care packages filled with her favorite cookies and books I thought she might enjoy. Photos from Tyler's graduation, hoping to show her the stability we'd achieved, the peace that had been worth the sacrifice. Pictures of the garden where Sarah's roses still bloomed every spring. Everything came back unopened. Mark returned to sender in Emma's increasingly sophisticated handwriting. David started suggesting we give her space to reach out when she's ready, but I knew my daughter. Emma had inherited Sarah's stubborn streak and my own tendency to hold grudges like precious stones, polishing them until they gleamed with resentment. Space wasn't going to fix what I'd broken with such thorough precision. I hired a private investigator last spring to make sure she was safe, telling myself it was just parental concern and not stalking. The report came back with details that shattered me. Emma was thriving at Riverside Academy. Straight A's across the board. Student council president her junior year. Captain of the debate team. Close friendships with girls who came from families as broken as ours. A boyfriend named Marcus who played guitar and made her laugh in ways I hadn't heard since before Sarah got sick. She'd built a whole life without me. Without any of us. The investigator included photos that I studied like archaeological artifacts, searching for traces of the little girl I'd lost. Emma at 17 looked so much like Sarah it took my breath away, same wild curls that refused to be tamed, same determined jawline, same way of tilting her head when she was thinking through a problem. But her eyes were different. Harder. The soft vulnerability of childhood had been replaced by something sharper, more guarded, like she'd learned to armor herself against disappointment. In every photo, she was smiling. Genuine smiles, not the polite masks she'd worn during our last few months together. She looked confident, surrounded by friends who clearly adored her. She looked happy in a way that had nothing to do with me or the family we'd once been. She looked happy without me. That's when I realized the true cost of my choice. I hadn't just sent Emma away to protect Tyler. I'd sent away the last living piece of Sarah, the daughter who carried her mother's voice in her bones and her stubborn courage in her heart. The daughter who needed me to choose her first, always, the way Sarah would have done without hesitation. The way I should have done. Tyler's in his junior year of college now, studying pre-med with a focus on mental health counseling, a choice that makes my stomach twist with irony. He's dating a sweet girl named Ashley who sends me handwritten thank you notes after visits and bakes elaborate birthday cakes for David. He's everything we hoped he'd become, stable, confident, successful, kind. Sometimes he asks about Emma, usually around holidays when guilt settles over our house like fog. Have you heard from her lately? He'll ask, and I can see the weight he carries in his eyes. He knows what his peace cost. He's old enough now to understand that his mental health came at the price of his stepsister's place in our family. Not lately, I always answer, keeping my voice light. But I'm sure she's doing well. It's not exactly a lie. I know she's doing well. I just don't know her anymore. Last month, I got a call from Riverside Academy's alumni coordinator. Emma had graduated valedictorian and earned a full ride to Northwestern University, planning to double major in psychology and pre-law. She'd specifically requested that no family be notified of the ceremony. She's an exceptional young woman, the coordinator told me with genuine warmth. Resilient, intelligent, compassionate. She's chosen not to maintain family contact, but I wanted you to know how proud you should be. She's going to change the world. Proud. Yes, I was proud. Proud and completely heartbroken that my daughter had become extraordinary in spite of me, not because of anything I'd done. I drove to Northwestern's campus last weekend, telling David the first needed a few days to visit an old college friend from law school. I didn't plan to approach Emma or interfere in her life. I just needed to see her with my own eyes. To know she was real and whole and surviving without me. I found her in the campus coffee shop on a gray December afternoon, head bent over textbooks with that same intense focus Sarah used to get when she was working on a difficult case. Her hair was longer now, pulled back in a messy bun with a few rebellious curls escaping around her face. She was wearing Sarah's old silver bracelet, the one I'd packed in her suitcase 3 years ago and assumed she'd thrown away. I sat 3 tables away and watched my daughter exist in a world I wasn't part of. She looked up when a friend approached her table, a tall black girl with intricate braids and an infectious laugh, and Emma's face transformed into a bright smile that made my chest ache with recognition. Sarah used to smile exactly like that when I'd surprise her with lunch at her office. Emma laughed at something her friend said, throwing her head back the way she used to when she was little, and I'd tell her silly jokes during dinner. The sound carried across the coffee shop and hit me like a memory made physical, so familiar and so far away I felt dizzy. She was still my Emma underneath everything. Still the little girl who used to demand one more story before bed and leave me drawings of flowers under my pillow on random Tuesday mornings. But she was also entirely herself now, shaped by experiences I wasn't part of, strengthened by challenges I hadn't helped her face. A young man approached their table, Marcus, I realized, recognizing him from the investigator's photos. Tall and lean with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He kissed the top of Emma's head before sitting down, and she leaned into him with easy affection that spoke of deep trust and security. I watched them study together for 2 hours, their heads bent close over textbooks, occasionally sharing quiet jokes or stealing sips from each other's coffee cups. They looked like any other college couple planning their future together, except this was my daughter planning a future that would never include me. I left before she could notice me. Before I could complicate her carefully constructed life with my presence and my guilt and my desperate need for forgiveness she had every right not to give. Now it's Christmas Eve, and I'm holding this return card, wondering if there's any path back to my daughter's heart or if some bridges burned too completely to ever rebuild. The house is quiet in a way that used to feel peaceful but now feels hollow. David's parents took Tyler and Ashley skiing in Colorado for the holiday, and David went with them because he knows being here without them would feel too much like the old days when grief hung in our hallways like smoke. He asked me to come, promised we could find ways to enjoy ourselves and make new memories. But I couldn't bear pretending to celebrate when half my heart lives 3 states away with a girl who won't speak my name. I've written Emma 17 different letters over the past month. Apologies, explanations, desperate pleas for forgiveness. Memories of her childhood, updates about Tyler's success, promises to do better if she'd just give me a chance. I've thrown them all away because words feel too small for the damage I've done. How do you tell your child that you chose wrong? That protecting one kid cost you the other in ways you never imagined? That the silence in the house you bought with her exile feels more like death than peace? How do you admit that you sent away the most important person in your life because you were too weak and too afraid to find a solution that protected everyone you loved? My phone buzzes with a text from Tyler. Merry Christmas Eve, Mom. Thinking of you. Love you. Wish Emma was there with you. I text back, love you too, sweetheart. Have fun on the slopes. Don't worry about me. But his words twist something in my chest. Tyler wishes Emma was here. He's carried the guilt of her absence for 3 years, probably wondering if his mental health was worth his stepsister's exile. I made him complicit in my choice, gave him a burden no teenager should have to carry. I stare at my contacts list, Emma's name still there after all these years of silence. Her number probably hasn't changed, Riverside Academy keeps the same phones for their students throughout their stay. My finger hovers over the call button the way it does every Christmas, every birthday, every random Tuesday when the grief hits me like a surprise punch to the gut. But I don't call. She's made her choice clear in the most definitive way possible. I'm dead to her too, she said, and maybe that's the kindness I owe her now. The final sacrifice. Letting her stay buried to the mother who failed her so completely she had to reinvent herself to survive. Outside, snow is beginning to fall in thick, heavy flakes. The kind of soft, magical snow that Sarah loved, that Emma used to try to catch on her tongue in our backyard while I watched from the kitchen window. I wonder if it's snowing in Chicago. If Emma looks up at the winter sky and remembers being small and safe and loved unconditionally. I wonder if she ever misses me the way I miss her every single day, or if she's learned to think of me as a cautionary tale she survived rather than a mother she lost. The grandfather clock in the hallway, Sarah's grandfather clock, the one Emma used to wind every Sunday morning as a special grown-up job, chimes midnight. Christmas Day officially begins, and somewhere in Illinois, my daughter is probably asleep in a dorm room decorated with photos of friends who've never heard my name. Building a future I'll never see. Loving people I'll never meet. Planning holidays I'll never be invited to share. I failed her when she needed me most, chose what felt like the practical solution over the brave one. I prioritized Tyler's mental health over Emma's sense of security and belonging. I picked the child who seemed easier to save over the child who needed saving more. Tyler is thriving, exactly as we hoped. Got into medical school. Found love. Learned to sleep through the night without anxiety. The house is peaceful, exactly as we planned. And I am exactly as alone as I deserve to be. The returned Christmas card sits on my kitchen table like evidence of my greatest failure, surrounded by the remnants of a holiday I can't bear to celebrate. Tomorrow, I'll put it away with all the others. Add it to the collection of love that has nowhere to go, hope that has no home, apologies that will never be heard. Emma was right that night before I sent her away. I chose Tyler over her. I chose peace over love. I chose wrong in every way that matters. And now, every Christmas morning for the rest of my life, I'll wake up in a quiet house and remember the daughter who loved me enough to call me mom, and how I broke that love with a single, irreversible decision made out of fear instead of faith. Some mistakes don't get second chances. Some daughters don't come home. And some mothers have to live forever with the sound of their own choices echoing in empty rooms where forgiveness used to live, where laughter used to ring, where a little girl used to play recordings of her mother's voice and find comfort in the darkness. I sent Emma away to save Tyler's peace, and in doing so, I lost the most precious thing Sarah left me, the living proof that love survives even death, that grief is just another word for the persistence of devotion. Now I'm the one grieving, mourning a daughter who's alive and thriving and perfectly fine without me. And unlike Emma's grief for Sarah, mine has no nobility, no honor, no claim to sympathy or understanding. I'm mourning the consequences of my own choices. And that's a loneliness I'll carry until the day I die. The first Christmas after Emma left, I decorated the tree with all her ornaments still hanging in their usual spots. The paper angel she'd made in kindergarten with Sarah's help, crooked wings and all. The ceramic snowman from her second grade art class with Emma 2010 painted in wobbly letters on the bottom. The photo ornament from her last Christmas with Sarah, both of them wearing matching reindeer sweaters and laughing at something just outside the camera's view. Tyler found me crying underneath the tree at 3 a.m, surrounded by presents I'd wrapped for a daughter who wouldn't be there to open them. Maybe we could send them to her? He suggested quietly, settling down beside me on the carpet. He was still so thin then, still jumping at loud noises, but his eyes were clearer than they'd been in months. She won't accept them, I whispered, touching the angel's bent wing. Everything I've sent comes back. Tyler was quiet for a long moment, studying the ornaments that told the story of Emma's childhood. I didn't want her to leave, he said finally. I just wanted to sleep. I know, sweetheart. Do you think she hates me? The question hung in the air like smoke from a blown-out candle. How do you tell a 17-year-old that his stepsister probably does hate him, that she sees him as the reason she lost her family twice? How do you explain that children caught in the crossfire of adult decisions don't always have the luxury of understanding? I think she's hurt, I said instead. And when people are hurt, sometimes they need someone to blame. She should blame you, Tyler said with devastating honesty. You're the one who sent her away. He was right, of course. But Emma was 12, and 12-year-old logic doesn't always work that way. In her mind, I'd chosen Tyler over her, which meant Tyler was the prize worth more than she was. That kind of wound doesn't heal with explanation or time. That first Christmas without Emma taught me something about guilt that I'm still learning 3 years later. It's not a feeling you process and move past. It's a companion that moves in and rearranges your furniture, changes how you see every room in your life. I started keeping a journal that winter, thinking maybe if I wrote down all the ways I'd failed Emma, I could figure out how to fix them. Page after page of memories I'd somehow forgotten in the chaos of those last few months. How she used to leave me notes in my lunch when I had difficult court cases. How she'd brush my hair while I did bedtime stories, her small fingers gentle against my scalp. How she'd defended me to Sarah's sister when Aunt Jennifer suggested Emma should come live with her after the funeral. Rebecca's my mom now too, Emma had said with fierce loyalty. She promised Mommy she'd take care of me, and she keeps her promises. The irony of that memory nearly broke me. I'd kept my promise to Sarah by sending Emma away. At least, that's what I told myself at 3 a.m. when the guilt was eating me alive. Sarah and I had talked about Emma's future during those terrible last weeks before the cancer one. I'd promised to love Emma like my own daughter, to give her stability and security, to help her remember Sarah while building new happiness. Sarah had gripped my hand with what little strength she had left and made me swear I'd never let Emma feel abandoned or unloved. "She's going to need you to be stronger than everyone else," Sarah had whispered. "When it gets hard, and it will get hard, choose her first. Always choose her first." I'd failed that promise so completely it felt like a betrayal of Sarah too. The second year was worse. Tyler was thriving in his senior year, planning college visits and getting excited about his future. The house felt normal again, peaceful breakfasts, homework scattered on the kitchen table, friends coming over to play video games. Everything I'd thought I wanted when I'd made the decision to send Emma away. But normal felt wrong when it came at the cost of my daughter's presence. I found myself listening for her footsteps in the hallway, turning toward her empty chair at dinner, buying her favorite cereal out of habit and letting it go stale in the pantry. David suggested we convert Emma's room into a home office. "She's doing well at school," he reasoned. "Maybe it's time to accept that this is working for everyone." I couldn't do it. Couldn't pack away the last physical evidence that Emma had once lived in our house and belonged to our family. Her room became a shrine, dusted weekly but never changed. Her artwork still taped to the walls. Her books arranged on the shelves exactly as she'd left them. Her bed made with the lavender comforter Sarah had bought her for her 11th birthday. Sometimes I'd sit in there and try to feel close to her, but it was like visiting a museum exhibit of interrupted childhood. The room held the memory of Emma but not the reality of who she was becoming. That's when I started following her social media accounts. Not directly, she'd blocked me from everything by sophomore year, but through fake profiles and friend requests to classmates who didn't know our history. I became an expert at digital stalking, screenshotting photos of my daughter living her life without me. Emma at her first school dance, wearing a midnight blue dress I didn't pick out. Emma winning a debate tournament, holding a trophy I hadn't watched her earn. Emma laughing with friends whose names I didn't know, inside jokes I'd never understand. The worst was a photo from her junior year, Emma and Marcus at what looked like a school carnival, sharing cotton candy and looking at each other like they held the whole world between them. The caption read, "When someone makes you feel like home," red heart emoji. I stared at that photo for hours, memorizing the way Emma's face lit up with happiness that had nothing to do with me or the family she'd lost. Marcus made her feel like home. Not me. Not the house where she'd grown up with Sarah. This boy I'd never met had become her safe space while I'd become the person she needed protecting from. The third year, I hired a therapist. Dr. Rodriguez listened to my story with the kind of professional compassion that somehow made everything worse. She asked careful questions about my relationship with guilt and patterns of decision-making under stress. "It sounds like you made an impossible choice," she said during our 5th session. "You had 2 children in crisis and limited resources to help them both." "But I chose wrong," I insisted. "I chose the child who seemed easier to save over the child who needed saving more." "Did you?" Tyler was having panic attacks and his grades were failing. Emma was stuck in complicated grief that wasn't responding to outpatient treatment. Perhaps the question isn't whether you chose wrong, but whether there was a right choice available at all. I wanted to believe her. Wanted to accept the absolution she was offering. But every returned letter, every blocked phone call, every Christmas card marked returned to sender reminded me that good intentions don't erase bad outcomes. Dr. Rodriguez helped me understand the difference between guilt and shame, between grieving my choices and drowning in self-hatred. But understanding didn't change the fundamental truth. I'd had a daughter who needed me to choose her first, and I'd chosen everyone else's comfort instead. The sessions helped with the insomnia and the panic attacks I'd started having in grocery stores when I'd accidentally reach for Emma's favorite snacks. But they couldn't fix the basic architecture of my life, which had been built around being Emma's mother and was now just an empty framework with no purpose. Tyler graduated college summa cum laude and got engaged to Ashley on Christmas Eve of his senior year. They came home glowing with happiness and plans for a small wedding in the spring. Ashley showed me her ring, a simple solitaire that caught the light like captured starshine, and talked about wanting children someday. "I hope our kids are as smart and kind as Tyler," she said, squeezing his hand. "He's told me so much about Emma. I hope I get to meet her someday." Tyler's face went carefully neutral. "Maybe someday," he said, but his eyes found mine across the room with a question he'd been too afraid to ask for 3 years. Was there any chance Emma would ever come home? I didn't have an answer for him. How do you explain that some losses are permanent, that some relationships don't survive the choices we make in crisis? That night, after Tyler and Ashley had gone to bed, David found me sitting at the kitchen table with Emma's last school photo spread in front of me. She was 15 in the picture, all arms and legs and serious eyes, wearing the silver bracelet I'd given her for her 13th birthday. "She looks like Sarah," David said quietly, settling into the chair beside me. "She looks like herself," I corrected. "Like the person she became without us." David was quiet for a long moment. We'd learned to navigate around the Emma-shaped hole in our marriage, but it was always there between us. The decision that had saved Tyler but cost me my daughter. The choice that had brought peace to our house but haunted our dreams. Do you ever regret marrying me? I asked into the silence. David's hand covered mine. Never. Do you regret choosing Tyler? It was a question he'd never asked directly, though I knew it kept him awake sometimes. Did I blame him for Emma's exile? Did I resent Tyler for surviving when Emma was the one who'd been sent away? I regret not finding another way, I said finally. I regret being so afraid of Tyler breaking that I broke Emma instead. You didn't break her, David said. Have you seen her grades? Her achievements? She's extraordinary. She's extraordinary in spite of me, not because of me. There's a difference. The wedding was beautiful. Tyler and Ashley exchanged vows in the backyard where Emma used to hunt for fairy houses and build elaborate obstacle courses for the neighborhood cats. I cried during the ceremony, partly from happiness and partly from the crushing awareness that Emma should have been there as Tyler's sister, not absent as evidence of family choices that couldn't be undone. In his speech, Tyler thanked David and me for giving him a stable home and the confidence to build his own family. He didn't mention Emma, but I saw him glance toward the house where her window looked down on the festivities like a dark eye. Ashley's parents asked about Tyler's sister during the reception dinner. They'd heard he had a stepsister but hadn't met her. Emma's away at school, I said, the lie is smooth as glass after years of practice. She couldn't make it home for the wedding. What a shame, Ashley's mother said kindly. Family is so important at times like these. I excused myself and spent 20 minutes crying in the bathroom, muffling the sound so I wouldn't ruin my son's wedding day with my daughter's absence. That summer, I did something that crossed every boundary I'd set for myself. I drove to Vermont and sat in the parking lot outside Riverside Academy during their graduation ceremony. I didn't go inside. Emma had specifically requested no family contact, but I watched through the windows as she walked across the stage to accept her diploma. She was valedictorian, as I'd heard from the alumni coordinator. Tall and confident in her cap and gown, shaking hands with the headmaster like she owned the world. When they called her name, the applause was thunderous. Other students genuinely loved her, respected her, saw her as a leader worth following. I watched my daughter graduate high school from a parking lot, like a stalker rather than a mother. But I couldn't stay away. This was the milestone I'd missed, the moment that marked her transition from the child I'd sent away to the adult she'd become without me. After the ceremony, I saw her with her friends, the California girl with the vintage postcards, a quiet boy who looked like he wrote poetry, Marcus with his guitar case slung over his shoulder. They were taking photos, laughing, planning whatever adventure came next. Emma was at the center of it all, radiant with the kind of happiness that comes from surviving something difficult and discovering you're stronger than you knew. I wanted to approach her then. To walk across that parking lot and tell her how proud I was, how sorry I was, how much I'd missed watching her become this incredible person. But I didn't have the right anymore. I'd forfeited that privilege when I'd chosen Tyler's comfort over her sense of belonging. So I sat in my car and cried while my daughter celebrated the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, surrounded by people who'd been there for her when I hadn't. The drive home took 6 hours, and I spent every minute replaying the last 3 years, looking for the moment when I could have chosen differently. When I could have found a solution that protected Tyler without sacrificing Emma. When I could have been the mother Sarah expected me to be instead of the one who crumbled under pressure. But the thing about irreversible choices is that you can't undo them by finding better options in hindsight. You can only live with the consequences and try to build something meaningful from the wreckage. Now, sitting here with this returned Christmas card, I realize that Emma's silence isn't just punishment, it's protection. She's built a life where my choices can't hurt her anymore. Where my love comes with conditions she's unwilling to meet. Where my presence is a threat to the peace she's created for herself. I taught her that family love isn't unconditional when I sent her away to save someone else. Now she's learned the lesson so well she's applied it to me. The snow is falling harder now, covering the garden where Sarah's roses sleep under winter's protection. In the spring, they'll bloom again without any help from me, the way they have every year since Sarah died. Some things survive despite neglect. Some things grow stronger in difficult conditions. My daughter is blooming somewhere in Illinois, surrounded by people who choose her first every day. And maybe that's enough. Maybe love isn't always about being present, sometimes it's about stepping back far enough to let someone thrive without you. But knowing that doesn't make the loneliness any easier to bear. Doesn't make Christmas morning any less hollow. Doesn't make the sound of her voice saying I love mommy, and she's dead too now any quieter in the 3 a.m. darkness when guilt comes calling like an old friend with too much time to spend. Tomorrow, Tyler and Ashley will call from Colorado to check on me. David will suggest we take a trip somewhere warm, start making new memories that don't revolve around missing the ones we lost. Life will continue moving forward the way it has for 3 years, carrying me further away from the mother I used to be toward the stranger I've become. And somewhere in Chicago, Emma will wake up on Christmas morning in a dorm room decorated with photos of friends who've never heard my name, planning a future I'll never see, loving people I'll never meet. She'll be happy in a way that has nothing to do with me, and that happiness will be the most beautiful and terrible gift I've ever given her. The gift of a life without me in it. The gift of learning she's strong enough to survive anything, even the mother who was supposed to protect her but chose everyone else instead. Some daughters don't come home. Some mothers don't deserve them too. And some love stories end not with reunion and forgiveness, but with the quiet recognition that letting go is the last act of love you have left to give. There's a voicemail on my phone from 2 months ago that I've never deleted. It wasn't meant for me. Emma called my number by accident, probably trying to reach someone else whose contact information was similar to mine. I almost deleted it immediately, but then I heard her voice, older and steadier than I remembered, talking to what sounded like a roommate. "Yeah, I'll be there in 10 minutes. Just grabbing coffee first. Did you remember to submit the housing application for next year? I really want that apartment near the psychology building." Her voice was confident, purposeful. She sounded like someone who knew exactly where she was going and how to get there. She sounded like the kind of person who makes deliberate choices and lives with them peacefully. She sounded nothing like the broken 12-year-old I'd sent away. I must have listened to that 47-second recording 100 times, memorizing the cadence of her speech, the way she laughed at something her roommate said in the background. It was the closest I'd been to her real life in 3 years, this accidental glimpse into her ordinary Tuesday afternoon. When I finally played it for David, he listened with tears in his eyes. "She sounds happy," he said quietly. "She sounds like Sarah," I replied. "Like Sarah used to sound when she was excited about a case she was working on." That voicemail is still on my phone. Sometimes I play it when the guilt gets too heavy, when I need to remind myself that Emma survived my choices. That she's not just surviving, she's thriving in ways that have nothing to do with me. I've thought about calling that number back, pretending it was an accident too. But what would I say? "Hi Emma, I know you've blocked me everywhere and returned every letter, but I got your voicemail by mistake and just wanted to hear your voice?" The desperation in that imaginary conversation makes my stomach turn. There's a difference between missing someone and stalking them. A difference between love and obsession. I learned that lesson too late with Emma, but I'm trying to apply it now in the space between us. Sometimes Tyler asks if I think Emma will ever forgive me. Usually late at night when Ashley's asleep and he's feeling the weight of being the child who stayed while his sister was sent away. "I don't know," I tell him honestly. "But I'm not sure forgiveness is the point anymore." "What do you mean?" "I mean maybe the point is that she doesn't need to forgive me to be okay. Maybe the point is that she's built a life where my choices can't hurt her anymore." Tyler considers this, turning his wedding ring around his finger the way he used to fidget with his school ID when he was nervous. "Do you think she knows we love her?" he asks. "I think she knows we love the version of her that lived here," I say. "But that Emma doesn't exist anymore. We sent away a grieving little girl and she became someone else entirely. Someone stronger and smarter and more independent than she ever would have been if she'd stayed. It's a terrible kind of pride, watching your child succeed because they had to survive you rather than because you helped them grow. But it's the only kind of pride I have left when it comes to Emma." The Christmas card sits unopened on my kitchen table, a small monument to love that has nowhere to go. Tomorrow I'll put it away with all the others, add it to the collection of feelings that have no home, hopes that will never be answered. But tonight, I'll sit here in this quiet house and listen to that accidental voicemail one more time. I'll close my eyes and imagine Emma in her apartment near the psychology building, probably studying late into the night, building the kind of future Sarah always dreamed she'd have. And I'll try to find peace in the knowledge that my daughter is exactly where she's supposed to be, even if it's not with me.